These four insights show the ancient world knew a lot about mental health. I should say so. Remember the health centers that they had in ancient Greece? It was it was a very spiritual place. People would go there for a week, 10 days. They would confess. They would wash daily. They would fast. They would listen to music. They would look at art while listening to this music. And every day they had to watch two plays. One was a tragedy, the other was a comedy. These plays usually were involved with very serious problems in people's lives at that time. They had to cry it out during the tragedy, and the same problems again were presented in the comedy, and they had to laugh it out as well. A lot of people that way with psychosomatic were healed from their inflictions. So, these four insights show the ancient world knew a lot about mental health. According to the World Health Organization, about 280 million people worldwide have depression, and about 1 billion have a mental health problem of any kind. People living in the ancient world also had mental health problems, so how did they deal with them? And as we'll see, because you can get sick by that. We have this one girl coming to our church, and I ask her about her mother. She says she gets panic attacks because she has anxiety, and because she's living alone in a different city. And even though she goes to church, she doesn't realize that, why are you afraid? Jesus is in charge of everything. And it can affect your health, obviously. Now, people living in ancient world also had mental health problems, so how did they deal with them? As we'll see, some of their insights about mental health are still relevant today, even though we might question some of their their methods. Number one, our mental state is important. Mental health problems such as depression were familiar to people in the ancient world. Homer, the ancient Greek, the poet famous for the Iliad and the Odyssey, who lived around the 8th century BC, apparently died after wasting away from depression. Already in the late 5th century BC, ancient Greek doctors recognized that our health partly depends on the state of our thoughts. In the Epidemics, the medical text written around 400 BC, an anonymous doctor wrote that our habits about our thinking, as well as our lifestyle, clothing and housing, physical activity and sex, are the main determinants of our health. 2, mental health problems can make us ill. Also writing in the Epidemics of ancient Greek, now an anonymous doctor describes one of his patients, Parmenicus, whose mental state became so bad he grew delirious and eventually could not even speak. He stayed in bed for 14 days before he was cured, and we're not told how. Later, the famous Dr. Galen of Pergamum, 129 to 216 AD, observed that people often became sick because of bad mental state. It may be that under certain circumstances, thinking is one of the causes that bring about health or disease, because people who get angry about everything and become confused, distressed, and frightened for the slightest reason often fall ill for this reason and have a hard time getting over these illnesses. Galen also described some of his patients who suffered with their mental health, including some who became seriously ill and died, and one man even had lost his money. He developed a fever that stayed with him for a long time. In his sleep, he scolded himself for his loss. In other words, he got depressed because he lost his fortune, right? Regretting it, and was agitated until he woke up. While he was awake, he continued to waste away from grief. He then became delirious and developed brain fever. He finally fell into a delirium that was obvious from what he said, and he remained in this state until he died. Number 3, mental illness can be prevented and treated. In the ancient world, people had many different ways to prevent or treat mental illnesses. The philosopher Aristippus, who lived in the 5th century BC, used to advise people to focus on the present and avoid mental disturbance. In other words, forget about the past and just concern yourself about now and the future. Concentrate one's mind on the day, and indeed on that part of the day in which one is acting or thinking. Only the present belongs to us, not the past or what is anticipated. The former has ceased to exist, and it is uncertain if the latter will exist. The philosopher Plinius, who lived in the 4th century BC, said that whenever he realized he was becoming angry, he would go and play music on his lyre to calm himself. Music soothes the savage beast. Now, doctors had their own approaches to dealing with mental health problems. Many recommended patients change their lifestyles to adjust their mental states. They advised people to take up a new regime of exercise, adopt a different diet, go traveling by sea, listen to the lectures of philosophers, play games such as draughts and checkers, and do mental exercise as equivalent to the modern crossword or Sudoku. For instance, the physician Callius Aurelius, 5th century AD, thought patients suffering from insanity could benefit from a varied diet, including fruit and mild wine. Doctors also advised people to take plant-based medications. For example, the herb hellebore was given to people suffering from paranoia. However, ancient doctors recognized that hellebore could be dangerous, as it sometimes included toxic spasms, killing the patients. Other doctors, such as Galen, had a slightly different view. He believed mental problems were caused by some idea that had taken hold of the mind. He believed mental problems could be cured if this idea was removed from the mind, and wrote this: "A person whose illness is caused by thinking is only cured by taking care of the false idea that has taken over his mind, not by foods, drink, clothing, housing, baths, walking, and other such measures." Galen thought it was best to deflect his patients' thoughts away from these false ideas by putting new ideas and emotions in their minds. He said, "I put fear of losing money, political intrigue, drinking poison, or other such things in the hearts of others to deflect their thoughts to these things. In others, I should arouse indignation about an injustice, love of rivalry, and the desire to beat others depending on each person's interest." Number 4, addressing mental health needs effort. Generally speaking, the ancients believed keeping our mental state healthy required effort. If we were anxious or angry or despondent, then we needed to do something that brought us the opposite of those emotions. This can be achieved, they thought, by doing some activity that directly countered the emotions we were experiencing. For example, Silius Aurelianus said people suffering from depression should do activities that cause them to laugh and be happy, such as going to see a comedy at the theater. Okay, this again, of course, talks about the health centers of ancient Greece. Now, the Asclepius centers, however, I said before that they watch a tragedy and a comedy. Now, however, the ancients did not believe any single activity was enough to make our mental health state become healthy. The important thing was to make a wholesome change to one's way of living and thinking. When it comes to experiencing mental health problems, we clearly have a lot in common with our ancient ancestors. Much of what they said seems as relevant now as it did 2,000 years ago, even if we use different methods and medicines today. So if this story has raised concerns, you need to talk to someone, please consult the list of the 24/7 crisis hotline in your country. This is from The Conversation, Creative Commons by Konstantin Panagidis, Mackenzie postdoctoral fellow, researching Greco-Roman antiquity, the University of Melbourne, Australia, on Science Alert. I would venture to advise you that a very immediate way to straighten out your mental health is by going to Holy Confession. The Christian Orthodox priest's prayer at the end of the confession is actually an exorcism prayer. You come out feeling as light as a bird. Please, it's also, of course, I'm talking about my own self. It's also a way of healing your body and soul. Please leave your comments. This is by Konstantin Panagidis from The Conversation at Science Alert. Thank you for your support. Finally, support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.